Bob hearing this right now?
I'm going to call on Bob first. I spoke to Bob off air, and I privately said I would use Bob or go with Bob first because I want to do it before he gets going in that rocking chair. Otherwise, we need Dramamine over here on this side. So go ahead, Bob. Open it up.
All right. Well, Pete, what's the update on Quandre Diggs, and did he have the surgery already, or?
I don't have any updates yet today. Sorry, I don't have anything other than that he's getting worked on.
Okay.
Sorry.
And DK had told us that he maybe was going to have a procedure. Has that been figured out?
I don't have anything the final on that either. I know that that's what he's looking into. That was it. That was the start.
Wow. Thanks, Bob.
Well,
we'll come back to you, Bob. Corbin.
Hey, Pete, I know winning the last two games is a positive momentum builder any way you can slice it, but how much more encouraging is it for you when you consider the sheer number of young players that played key contribution roles getting these victories, particularly yesterday? Guys like Jay Curhan and Phil Haynes.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of you guys asked, are we going to play some younger guys and take a look at some people, or somebody was asking those questions. I would say, no, not necessarily. We're going to play the games and see what happens. But it did happen in these last couple of weeks because of COVID and a little bit of injury situations and all of that, where guys did get chances to follow through and maybe come back, and like Philip got to come back again, and Jake got to come back again and play again. There's such positive opportunities for those guys to show themselves, and they played well too. And they in that situation they could have not done well, but they did well. And Josh Jones for us, on one side, and then Nigel Warrior getting in the game and playing. It was just great that guys got opportunities. We always, and you saw a big hit by Josh Johnson on the kickoff coverage. All of those things are good signals for these guys, and I'm really happy for them that they got the chance to show something before the season was over.
Jen?
Pete, a couple of guys mentioned the fact that if there were OTAs available last year, it would have made it easier to learn a new offense and a new defensive front. How much would that help the learning curve going forward if you can get back into some of those workouts?
Yeah, I did mention that to the guys today before we got out of here, that we kind of did the bare minimum last year in terms of opportunities to get together, and let's just revisit that and what the criteria is, what's going on. Right now there's a normal OTA season set up, phase 1, 2, and 3, starting April 18th, and so we'll see what that means. I don't know what that means right now, but I asked the guys to really be in communication, and let's make a really good run at understanding what is available, thinking that we know that it will help, and we know that it's better for the guys, particularly the young guys who get to get fitted into the new systems and all. And it's better for them to be practicing with guys that know what's going on than just practice with rookies like we did, and so we'll see what happens. I'm wide open for it. I'm anxious to see what our opportunities are and the options are, and we have a really good leadership group, and we'll figure out how to do that.
John Boyle?
Yeah, Pete, I think with a lot of the questions people might ask, you're going to tell us that, there's still time, you're figuring stuff out. Just what is the timeline for you in an off-season in terms of the evaluation of coaching players? Just sort of how's that timeline go for you when you get from this day going on?
Well, you started that off in a whole different vein, so we're not answering that first question? So, okay.
Well, no, I was
okay.
just pointing out that if someone asks you about the coaching staff, you're probably going to say that you're not there yet figuring that out. So I'm just kind of curious what your process looks like in the office.
Yeah, okay. So what the process is for us to when we get back going again, is to take all the information that we've accumulated, all of the numbers and the stats, and all of the printouts that we have to tell us all of the background, and we'll go through everything to how much they were able to practice, and time missed, and all of that, reps, who they matched up against, and all of that stuff, to just make individual evaluations on each guy. We really go both sides of the ball. Will go watch individual cut-ups of each guy as an entire staff, so that we can kind of make a collective evaluation, and we have the presentation of their statistics that support all of that, and we'll try to make a real clear evaluation of where the guy sits at that point. And then of course we compare the other guys that are there, and start to put together a whole a whole program of understanding our guys better than we've ever have, and so it's an exhaustive process for us, and we go through it with the intent of figuring out what we can do to help that guy be better. And it's really how we go about it.
Michael Sean?
Yeah, Pete, you said yesterday you were in great shape. Do you believe that to be true about John as well?
Yeah, we feel both like we're in great shape. I'll speak on behalf of John on that one.
Thank you.
It may be a little bit more obvious in my case, I don't know, but
we're talking about the same thing, right?
Sure.
Sure. All right. My follow-up was, you've talked a lot about the ball security, directly correlating to wins, and despite the ball security this year that didn't happen, do you feel like this year was an anomaly, or can you learn something about that relationship?
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, do you think this was an anomaly, or can you learn something maybe more about that correlation?
No, I do think it's an anomaly because it's been so consistent for so long that I'm not ready to just cash in the thought at this point. But look, for instance, in this game, we're -1 in the game we just won, and the turnovers were huge in this game, and we still overcame it. And so, that just doesn't go with the stats. You get a couple touchdown setups, on turnovers. Usually you win the football game. That's basically what you know, and it's really hard for that almost not to happen. But that does show you the game that we played and how really how special that outing was. It was a really, really important illustration, because the other side of it, I don't want to ever say that because we turn the ball over we lose. I don't want to go there, but and so I don't. But it's generally the case, and it's been proven for over a long time.
Have you been able to assess why you protected the ball the way you did and the wins didn't come?
I thought Chad Morton did an extraordinary job for us in leading the charge and teaching it and being on it all year long. It's such a discipline, because it encompasses so many snaps and so many people and opportunities that it's you're trying to really dig deep into the mindset and the mentality of your team so that they have the conscience it takes to be really disciplined and to avoid the mishaps that occur. Guys punch balls out and you get hit from behind and a sloppy attempt at a catch or whatever, the ball gets tipped, all of those things. Protection, and we're coaching up the Dwayne Brown in terms of turnovers and his job that he has to do, and in the center, and I mean everybody's got that responsibility if you're doing it right. So I think it has a tremendous effect, relationship to your ability to be effective. We've been hammering on this for years and years and years, and I mean our turnover numbers are pretty good if you look at us over the years and all the way back to college football too. So I do know that it has something to do with it. But anyway.
Thanks.
Sure.
Tim?
Pete, whenever it is that you meet with Jody, what will you sort of lay out for her or explain to her as to why this season went the way it did, and then how you move forward and try and get back to being a contender, a division champion, a playoff team moving forward from here?
Well, I'm going to save my special stuff for Jody if you don't mind. But
no, please, sure, no, we appreciate it.
Yeah, but there is we've all kind of chronicled. You guys have done a great job of chronicling what's happened during the season, and we've tried to explain it as we've gone with clarity and sensitivity and all of that. But there's some big things that showed up, and it's, the big things are the finishes. We didn't finish as effectively as we have in the past. We weren't as explosive when we needed to be, and we weren't as clean defensively, and as we needed to be for that last drive, last play. But there's also the obvious things are the numbers of the lack of turnovers that we were able to create. Usually those come when you're getting ahead in games, and if you're well ahead, then the ball gets more exposed and you get more turnovers, and that feeds off itself. But there's also, you got to create them, and we create them with pass rush, and pass rush is, the quarterback is the number one aspect of critical aspect of turning the football over. And so we talked through all of those stories. We'll talk through the availability of players that changed course for us and shifted us, losing Chris early and then Russ getting banged up. Those are all just the normal things that we'll go through. And then there's we're digging deep into all the analytics as well, to make sure that we're on track and we're accurate. How effective guys were in situations, and could we shift people around and put them in different spots at different times to make them more available for opportunity plays and all. And so there's a lot of stuff. I mean, but we've been through a lot of it together. The third down numbers have been such a big factor in the season, and how that correlates, and that will be also what kind of third downs they are. I think we had 6 or 8 or something 3rd and 1s yesterday, in the game for our defense to try and stop. A ridiculous number of 3rd and 1s. I've never seen that in the game, and your odds aren't great there, and so it just depends on how we're going to break everything down and go into really a long explanation of all of the stuff that we found at this early part. We're meeting this week, but it's going to take us months to get through all the information, but we'll give the best interpretation we can at this early time.
Curtis?
Yeah, Pete, off the top there, it appears that Geno Smith was arrested this morning. Just first of all, do you have any thoughts on that from what you know so far?
Yeah, I checked in with him, and we have to let his people handle all of that, and he was in the meeting today with us, and so I don't have anything other than that to give to you on that. Sorry.
Sure, and then moving on, when you kind of think about the season as a whole here and reflecting on everything that happened throughout the year, is there schematic things, personnel things you think back on that went worse than expected, better than expected, stuff that stood out to you as like maybe turning points in the year one way or another that went either intended or otherwise that kind of made an impression on you?
Yeah, the really simple answer to that is to say yes. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, and I'm not trying to cover up anything. I want to know the truth of what's going on. That's the whole point, is to get to the truth of it and figure it out and analyze it, and then track our way back through the process and see where could we have done better. Where could we have been farther ahead on third downs, for us through the process. How much did we work on it? Did we get enough? Were we missing the point? Did we not stress 3rd and 3 through 6 enough? And versus 7 and 10s and all of that stuff. So anyway, there's a ton of stuff here to deal with.
Art?
Over the last 5 years of drafts, have you got enough pro talent from that? Is it adequate, or would you say you're above average, below average? How do you feel about the success of the drafts? And if it's not adequate, is that a point of attention in this offseason?
Well, the first thing, all drafts are not created equal, and when you pick where we've picked over the years, you don't get the top 10 guys. You don't get the top 15 guys in our case. And so usually those are the guys that when we get to draft time, everybody knows who's going and where they're going, and it's so obvious, because those guys are the outliers. And as you get into the middle of the round and then down to the bottom of the round, it becomes much more wide open, much more speculative, so in that, with that thought, we're trying to figure out over the course of time of did we pick the right guys, and are they coming through for us, and all that. And I think if you like, for instance, let's say you went after how did Daryl Taylor do for you last year? He didn't do anything, but now you look at him now and you say, well, he looks like a great pick. He looks like a guy that's going to be an impactful player, and it's like that for all of the guys. Everybody's an individual case, I think, Art, and what I felt like we've had enough support from our drafts that have given us a chance to be a really successful team over a consistent course of time here. And so I there's always guys, there's always guys in there that you like more than you thought you would, or that you didn't turn out as well as you thought they would. And so but I think we've done a really good job in general, and we've been able to meet some needs that we had to, and other times we were surprised like crazy by the output of guys. I mean, go back in the drafts. I think you said the last 5 years, but you go back in the drafts and look at the numbers of guys that have been in the middle of the drafts for us. 4, 5, and 6s that have wound up playing a lot and done a lot of stuff for us. So, those are the kind of those are the exciting stories when you don't know. I mean, Chris Carson's a great one, seventh round pick, and but as we're moving forward, I think we've done a good job. We've given up some picks, for that we have to evaluate the play that we got out of the guys that we gave the picks away for, and to do that you'd have to go back and look at who could you have picked at that pick, and John's done all of that kind of stuff, and so I like our activity, I like our creativity in draft time, I like our flexibility. We've always moved and created stuff for us that we thought would help us numbers wise or position wise, and we're planning on staying the course on that as much as we can, and being as active and competitive as possible. So I like the guys that we've had. Basically, we've had. I remember the McDowell kid that got hurt in the off season, and that was we couldn't do anything about that. And that just happened. But that was a significant pick at the time that we really received no value out of. And that was a hard one to miss out on. He's a defensive tackle. Would have been a guy competing on the inside, the defense and all that. So, but for the most part, yeah, we felt pretty good about it. But we always want to do better.
Jackie?
Hey, Coach, as you close the door on 2021 and you start to look ahead to 2022, I'm just curious what your message is to the fans as you leave 2021 behind.
Well, the message was, let me just share kind of what I talked to the guys about today, that we were able to see the team that we can become, and over the course of this year, and we didn't get other things done, but we did see that, and I told them today, like I remember telling Cam and Sherm and those guys when they were in here years ago, that this is, in this room right now, is the nucleus of a championship team that we'll add to, and we'll bring in support, but the guys in this room are the guys that are going to make this happen, and that's what it feels like, and we should be excited about it. We should be, I'm excited about the chances of coming back and playing cleaner, sharper, more physical football than we did this year, more consistently, and with attending to the issues that we had, we should clean those things up, and we should be really good. We have a very challenging division, and we're going to have to be really good, and like I've said before, if you make it through this division, you should have a chance to win the whole thing, and so that's what we're aiming at.
Thank you.
Masvita?
Yep. Hey, Pete, I have two. The first one, without getting too much into your business, the players talk about your positiveness sun up to sundown, and you talked about what you do football-wise. I'm just wondering, what's your process like in terms of you regenerating your mindfulness after the season? Is there any certain routine you have, or?
Yeah, there's to some extent, we take a break right now. We need to break from the season and recover our sleep habits, somewhat, and get back to physically taking care of us, and because we push it really hard during the season, and we push it knowing, that when it ends, we'll recover then, and in the meantime, you just use a great attitude about grinding and working your way through it. But that's an important part, the recovery time. Just like the players recover, we got to recover too, and then it's just starting that process where you start dreaming about where it's going to go, and what it could possibly become, and that's to me is what gets you connected back into this next challenge that's coming up. It's like a whole new life that you live in the next, the months to come, and it's getting as connected and as directed and as strong as you can possibly be to take advantage of all the opportunities that you have with the decisions that you made and the people that you have, and that's how it goes. But it really begins with a recovery period. We got to get back, and we come back after the Super Bowl really raring to go, and that's been kind of the time frame, unless we have to extend it longer than that, when you play at the end. But so physical, mental recovery is the first thing, and then the rest of it is about getting work ethic back in order, getting going again.
And then one more kind of on the field. Was there a change in the blocking schematics for the run game, or was just multiple changes? Was there any one demarcation you all made in the run game?
What reference period? From last year to this year? Or from?
I'm sorry, this year, and I was thinking more in terms of when you went from Alex Collins to Rashard Penny, and obviously his success. Was that
No,
more his
yeah, yeah.
fault?
We did not. We didn't change things. We just kept developing or the consistency of it. And I, like I've said to you guys, I saw it earlier in the year that we weren't taking advantage of it, and we made the point of it, and we just needed to get the reads right and making sure we were taking advantage of the scheme, and it started to really pop, at different times with guys, and unfortunately it was inconsistent because Chris was rolling, he was getting all the work and the focal point of the the learning, and then Alex jumped up, and then he had to step aside, and then when Rashad got in there, he had seen it all, he had the benefit of seeing the whole process, and when he really got going, he was been lights out. So we didn't change it though, Maz. We just stayed with it and tried to believe that it was going to come through for us if we did it right and did it well and found the consistency, and it kind of happened.
Thank you.
Greg?
Sir, it's implied, but what explicitly do you mean when you say you're in good shape, or great shape for your future?
I've been saying it for about 4 or 5 years, and it gets me out of
Yes.
the next answer. So that's what I'm telling you.
So no change from any other offseason.
Mm.
What are the two biggest areas you want to improve this team for next season?
Well, I want to make sure that all of the guys that are with us, that we get our team back together, and which is the effort going through free agency. That we want to make sure that we're able to reconnect with our guys and get them back on our roster, and so we can build with continuity. That's an important part. But we need to improve our pass rush. That's an area that we need to get better. You saw how dynamic it is when you get going, like we did yesterday. But we didn't have that consistency, and that's an important part of it. So many things feed off of that. It's the disruption of the quarterback that leads to all the issues, on the positive side for the defense. And so we gotta whatever we can do, we have to work there. And so that's one of the focal points for me. And I really want to make sure that we're able to continue to push our guys, with people that are added to the program, push our receivers, push our running backs, and make those positions and continue to be really competitive across the board. But in those spots, I'd love to be able to add a guy here and a guy there. So we'll see how it goes.
And yesterday with the Quandre Diggs situation and his contract, and he's 9 minutes from his contract ending. You can't do it, of course, in the moment, but do you reassure him or give any other? I mean, obviously he was distraught. Everyone could see that. Did you talk to him at all about the future?
No, I haven't talked to him about that. But it should be implicit for us in messaging, because our message has not changed. I mean, all I can tell you is he's an awesome part of our team, and we'd love to have him with us. So this injury is not going to be one that's going to keep him from playing. So we just got to go through it, and it's unfortunate. It's a really difficult off season for him for the first 4 months, 3-4 months, and all that. But he'll get back and get going, and we'd love to have him with us.
Thanks for your time this whole season.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Same.
Miko?
Thank you. Coach, obviously, looking at the big picture now, is just a couple two-point conversions or a couple overtime games away from being in the playoffs and doing a game-win kind of press conference right now.
Right.
Looking at all that, how do you feel about the state of things overall? And is the way you finished 4 of 6 or winning the last 2 validation of the culture with this team? They never packed it in. In fact, they improved even when things got tougher.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of focused time on building the mentality of this program, and we've learned over the years to keep growing and expanding and trying to be as dynamic as we can to stay ahead of whatever's necessary to keep a workplace that guys like to be part of, and that they can dwell in, and they can have a chance to find their best and be challenged and competitive in. So we always are pushing to be as good as we can possibly be, and I'm really proud of that exists here. And our guys are pretty much, I don't have to talk about it. You guys can hear from them, but it is something that we have to continue to work at and continue to emphasize, because it is what gives us consistency. It is what gives us the connection and the lineage from years past, and the learning and all that kind of stuff that makes us strong. And you can build an environment where people can really enjoy being where they are, and and you can challenge them to work harder than they've ever worked before, and you can set out expectations that maybe other organizations wouldn't think you could, and you can do things that because you demand an attitude that brings you there. What happened in the last few weeks is remarkably important for us. These guys responded to a situation that you could have looked at a million different ways than the way we looked at it, but we went after it to maximize this finish, to help us be better, to demonstrate the pride that we take in being part of this organization and being part of this team and this locker room and all that, regardless of what anybody else would say or think or expect. And I think it was as obvious as you could make it, and I'm sure that they felt it too, the teams that we played, and both coaches, I think were surprised that we played the way we played against them, and there ain't nothing better than that, You surprised them a little bit because they couldn't expect that you could be like that. Well, these guys understood that was a challenge. It was a test for us. Can we pull it together and do that and be better than beyond expectations and enjoy the hell out of it and find excellence in it. And that's what I think we just watched it. And so it's really rewarding for us, and it's reinforcing, and it's going to help us as we go forward. That was the challenge. They took it on, and they met the challenge, and then maybe even exceeded expectations in doing so.
Thank you. Appreciate taking the new guys' questions all season. Thanks.
You got it.
That's actually me, Nico. Curtis?
I'll take credit for that.
Yeah,
Okay,
Pete,
let's
outside of Quandre,
can you call him Curtis? Oh, okay.
outside of Quandre and possibly DK, are there any surgeries you expect from your guys heading into the offseason here?
We haven't got the reports from all of the physicals today that came out. There's always, some subtle things that have to be subtle. Easy for me to say, but some simple. No, not that simple either. There's some surgeries that have to be done, for guys to clean some stuff up. But right now, I don't have anything in front of me. We thought we had a really successful year in terms of keeping guys healthy, in particular in all the soft tissue injuries. We have very few of those, which is really because of management and of the strength and conditioning and the training departments here. We're really pleased with that. You always have some accidents that happen, and you get injury situations that occur, but we felt really good about that, and I'm hoping that all our numbers will show that when we get the finals in by tomorrow. But right now we're in pretty good shape at this time.
And how would you kind of look at Eskridge this year? Obviously the injury, the concussion kind of set him back a little bit, but how would you kind of diagnose his year and the way it went along and his limited kind of impact on the field for you guys and where he's kind of been for you guys this season?
Without hesitation, he's going to be a really impactful player. I don't have any hesitation in saying that. He's got so much going for him, and he's such a talented kid and a good worker and all of that. That when we come back around, it's going to look so much different to him. The jump that the guys make from year 1 to year 2 is the most significant jump for the most part. I was talking to Daryl about that last night. That just how things are going to look so much different to him, and the day that they walk back in, and get back with us, they jump so much, and Eskridge is going to make a huge jump, and he's going to be a very impactful player. We'll get him involved in the kicking game more so. We worked with him all year on that. We weren't quite ready to really feature him, his opportunity there, but he can run it, he can catch it, and he block, and he's got a great work ethic. So there's nothing holding him back.
Bob?
Pete, how did you feel about the way Russell finished the season, especially these last couple games?
I thought he was at his best at the end. I thought he really played his best football down the stretch, and he was more resourceful. He had a really good game yesterday, moving to find the third down conversions, and connecting with guys, made the big plays, took off running, and made a terrific touchdown run. I just thought he's at his best in the last few weeks, and maybe it's significant in recognizing that that he was probably I'm sure every day from this point forward he's going to feel better and better and better, and put the surgery and all that behind him, which he already has, but it'll just be farther in the past, and it'll be less of a factor in any way. So I was really excited for the finish. It's really, really pleased and proud of that accomplishment, about the wins to start his career. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment, with only the greatest of players, to be compared to, and the consistency that it takes, the dedication that it takes to be available for that kind of a record, is, it's amazing, and he did it. He pulled it off with obviously teams around him and players around him. I like to always remember that Bobby was there with him too, for the most part of all those numbers, but it's still a great accomplishment, and it was significant that we got to do it in the last game of this year.
And do you have any, both Jamal Adams and Chris Carson, where are they at in terms of their rehabs at all?
Yeah, I talked to Jamal last night, just missing him, that he wasn't part of the finish of the season, and he's going to be such a significant part as we come back. I haven't talked to Chris in a little bit, messaged with him, but haven't talked with him in a bit. Those guys are both as gung-ho as you could imagine. I mean, to listen to Jamal and how much it hurt him to not be there with his teammates. These guys are ballers and they want to be part of everything. But anyway, they're really raring to go and expect to be back at full steam when it's time to go again at camp.
Tim?
Pete, I know you're not going to address staff changes as a whole, but specific to Shane and Kent, do you expect them to return in their specific roles next year at this time?
Yeah, I'm not addressing any of that stuff. This is that day, when a lot happens in the league to coaches, and it's a day that we respect differently than others. Until you're in it, you really can't relate to all of the impact of this day. But our coaches worked their tails off. They did a great job. We had we started our season-ending meetings today, and I'll get with all these guys before we get out of here. But I'm really proud of the work that everybody's done, and feel fortunate that we're doing this thing together.
And then for you personally, is it possible to quantify sort of the added stress these last two seasons have had with the COVID protocols and getting the reports in the middle of the night and trying to manage getting through coaching and playing during a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really an illustration of it's all about attitude, because we've made it through that, we got in such a groove with the first wave, of the Delta stuff, that we were handling it, and we were really in great shape with it and remarkably solid. But it was such a constant, like you're bringing up. I mean, it was just never went away, because it really was. Those nighttime. Remember, we were testing every day, and so we were having, there was results all the time, and just trying to stay ahead of it. And there was false positives throughout, that we had to deal with, and there was always, now what happens? And you go through the regret of it and all, but then when the Omicron thing hit, that really changed things, and it made it even different, because you were losing guys maybe one day, and then the next day was another, and there were so many people that were vulnerable to it, because it was significantly different. It hit significantly different than the first wave, and but I say that it's just kind of, we just took it on, we just had to manage it, and I had to be on it and positive and forthright, and we had to measure, the decisions that we were making on how to take care of our guys and look after them, and there was just so much going, and Sammy Ramsden and Matt Capurro were just, every day we were on this stuff, and so I don't know how to measure it, Tim, but it was it remains an amazing challenge, and we've done as well as you can do with it, and proud of the work we did, but it was hard. It was hard, and for everybody, and we understood it. But the last thing I say is that it takes an attitude to make it through it and hold it together, because it's hard. And I can see why so many families and areas and communities struggle, because if you don't have good leadership, and if you don't have really people that are banging the drum to keep on hanging tough, you get beat down by the stress of it and all. And we were able to handle it better than most in this controlled environment that we have, and we're grateful for that.
John?
Yeah, Pete, I feel like we've talked about Tyler Lockett a lot all year with the different awards and accomplishments. For him to end the season by the whole team leaves and he decides to prolong his offseason or delay his offseason by a little bit to stay behind with Quandre when he could have, been going back home. What does that tell you about him that he wants to do?
Yeah, there's no end to it. Like you said, we've been talking about John for a long time, and I mean he had a marvelous year in staying healthy. He was able to practice I think every day until we told him he had to rest a couple times. He had the blessing of great health through this year, which I talked to him last night about that, how grateful he was. In contrast to where Quandre walks out of this last game, but his heart has just been so big this year, and he's done so much, and he's been so thoughtful about making gestures and inspiring our players and coming up with stuff. And he and Ballore did a on all of our away games. They do a little presentation to the team about where we're going, and he was right in the middle of some beautifully creative things that they did to have fun and to lead us and to give perspective and all that. He's been remarkable. I mean, even all the way to when we're getting on the buses last night. His brother-in-law, or I don't know what it was, brother-in-law was the guy that made the barbecue for us. For all the players. I mean, just been connected to so many things that have happened during this season. That they were pretty amazing. So he had a great year again, and what a remarkable person.
Last question, Art.
Pete, in all the coaching changes that happened today, did you receive any inquiries from anyone seeking your interest in availability? And if not, was that disappointing?
What are you talking about? I got a job. What are you talking about?
Hey,
let me share a story with you, because on a different topic. The story I wanted to share with you guys was something that happened, and just because I thought it was such a cool thing, and it came up last night in the locker room with Darrell Taylor. He was banged up all last year, and when a guy's hurt for that long a period of time, it just has always historically seemed like they kind of walk in a path of, they're kind of in and out of scrutiny, usually unfairly centered, but he just was on the fringe of stuff, and we couldn't quite get him back, and he'd work, and he looked fantastic on the field, and then the next day he couldn't do it, and he just never could kind of get going. And so he had to spend so much time in rehab and so much time in strength and conditioning that, if he missed a time or whatever, that we'd only hear the negative things that would happen about him. And so we got to a point in the springtime where I was concerned about him. I didn't know if he's ever going to get well. I didn't know if he was going to ever get back to us. And he'd kind of been, just under the line of demarcation of being out of trouble. And so we had a meeting with the training staff and the strength and conditioning guys and the coaches, and we talked about everybody's opinion and background and story about Darrell, because we were trying to figure out how to help him and how to get him right. And so the accumulation of information led us to the point where, okay, he's kind of been on the edge, but we still don't really know, what kind of guy he is and what we can expect out of him. So we declared that let's do this. Let's wipe the slate clean, and let's clear the slate. Every scrutinizing element that we had to talk about DT, we're going to throw it in the garbage can and start all over and give him a fresh start and look at him brand new and see what would happen with that. So we made that decision. I said, nobody's talking about negative stuff and the old stuff. Nobody can even mention it. So I called him in and had him in the office and said, hey, Darrell, this is what's happened. We've been through all this and that. He'd been in my office a number of times for, correcting him on this or getting to this meeting on time or whatever it was. And I said, here's what we're going to do. We're throwing all that stuff in the garbage can. We're going to wipe the slate clean and give you a brand new fresh start. What do you think of that? And he said, oh, Coach, that's awesome. That's great, and real positive about it, big hug and all that, and boom, off we go. Well, from that point, if you remember, I was telling you guys who the most valuable guy in the offseason was Darrell, for all of the time he had put in remember he went through all of the rookie OTA stuff and all the whatever the camp work we could do and the workouts. He was there, and I thought he had gained the most that anybody could have gained because of he was so consistent. He never missed anything. His attitude was great. And we started seeing a guy that was, gosh, this guy's, what a great effort he's given here, and trying to not judge anything on the past. And now that we look and we finished the season with this kid, he didn't miss anything. He didn't do anything but make a positive impression on every aspect of our program. And he happens to be one of the most energetic guys. He brings excitement and juice and fun, and he's dancing, and he's pumping with the music. All every single aspect of how he involved himself was like off the charts. And we finished last night, and I give him a big hug. I say, "You remember that meeting we had?" He said, "Heck yeah, I remember that." And I think it's kind of a statement that I want to leave you guys with, that you can't always tell, and you can't, and if you don't give people that the sometimes the second, third, and whatever chances you got to give them, you might never really find out what somebody's all about. This guy was magnificent this season, and his play will get better. His he made mistakes and all that stuff during the games and all that, but it wasn't because he wasn't giving everything he got. And I'd like to think that to me that's an inspiration about how we should look at every guy in our program, and how we should look at everybody that's involved, and give them a chance to, let's go, brand new, clean slate, show me what you got and what you're going to bring, and with the intention of finding the best that they could possibly bring. And so I don't know who the next story will be, but I do know what Darrell Taylor did, and he inspired me to always be open to give guys another chance, and to figure out maybe they could come through, and maybe they could do something, and even when you least expect it. And so when you guys get a chance to follow up and watch him too, I hope you'll pay attention to what this guy's all about. I don't know how well you know him now through the work you've done with him, but man, what an impressive kid, an impressive season. And he finished off having a blast of a game, and big plays, and living large in the locker room and having a blast. So anyway, I just want to share that with you. I thought it was worth it. Okay, see you.
All right, thank you everyone, and thanks for being flexible all year, in and out of Zoom. We appreciate it.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.